It's always a difficult time after lunch. I hope you're all enjoying today as well. And we're just about to welcome Phil and Chris from the University of Central Lancashire. I said Lancaster then? Lancashire.
Been done before.
We're taking an authentic approach to developing digitally literate, work-ready graduates, which sounds fascinating.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Just take that a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm quite loud, so I'm going to bring this away from my mouth slightly. Okay. So while Chris is messing with his tie clip mic, my name is Phil. I'm a learning technologist, and with my colleague here, Chris, senior learning technologist at UCLan, we've been developing a few ways that we think kind of work with the idea of staff and students, and kind of blending digital skills along with accreditations for staff as well. So there you go, Chris. While you were sorting your time mark out, that helped you out.
Yeah. So just to briefly introduce myself, my name's Chris Melia, and I'm a senior learning technologist at the University of Central Lancashire, most of which Phil just covered while I was faffing with my mic. And yeah, we're here to talk about how we believe we're taking an authentic approach to developing digitally literate and work-ready graduates. I'll pass you over to Phil, who's going to do a bit of scene setting.
So part of my role at UCLan is that as part of being a learning technologist, I run the student-led digital skills program with a colleague of mine, Mark, who we've got essentially before this, prior to this, we've both got 10 years experience working in HE and FE, and we essentially decided to kind of, we were taken on board to run this digital skills sessions. So the idea is that it started out in 2015, but due to kind of resources, as we can all kind of attest, it was kind of ticking along. So late 2017 is when we kind of took over and had a little look at it. So while we're having a little look here, when we first started out, we were having a little look at kind of facts and figures that people have probably seen before. The idea of when we are developing student digital skills, where we are in terms of setting the scene, what's already out there. So again, people might have seen this before. There was a blog by Microsoft 2017 that talks about the idea that 2030, 85% of the jobs have obviously not been invented yet. And the idea is that those jobs are in what we can see there, robotics, AI, and machine learning as well. So that was something that we were obviously looking to just kind of back up what we were doing, reinforce things. And again, the idea that within the country, there are 21% of people who have very basic digital skills, and then further from that, 8% of them have zero. So getting close to 30 have very, very basic skills, and there's obviously going to be automatically a bridge in the market of the idea that when we hit 11 years time, there's going to be an issue there. So we were looking at this when we first started, and then while we were doing it, we were looking at kind of this particular fact as well. It's something that we've mentioned quite a lot today about Microsoft Office, and the idea as well to reinforce the fact that we were doing the right thing and teaching the right skills. You've got with the keys to the future, aligning workforce readiness skills. The first piece of software that's mentioned in their top 20 required skills, as you can see there, is number 4, Microsoft Office. So this was the kind of setting the scene, okay? Right, so digital skills, I gave a brief kind of introduction there. I'm aware that obviously a lot of organisations have similar kind of skills and similar sessions that might be out there for students. We basically run through the VLE access to our website, which is part of the UCLan website, and from that we have free bookable sessions that are in Microsoft Office, obviously, Office 365, because we do a lot of cloud-based learning in the last few years. And as well as that, my background works quite nicely after what Joy was talking about before is Adobe. So I run Adobe sessions as well, so that it gives students a choice, and it's all about problem solving within the changing working world. So with our workshops, we have beginner and intermediate sessions, as you could probably work out. The idea is giving these students a choice in terms of what they're going to work on. There's no prerequisite. And the idea that we have the beginner and intermediate one is the fact that there is then something to move on to. So when we get students booking onto a beginner session, often we get repeat custom, if you like, and Again, my background before education was retail, so apologies, I'm using the word custom. But the idea is that there are multiple sessions that then we can get students, once they're through the door with digital skills, they'll then come on to more of our sessions. And we are finding that for every student we have, they usually are booking on 2 or 3 more sessions through digital skills. So as well as that, talking about the promotion within our sessions, we obviously promote further sessions that we feel will benefit the students that are on that particular session. And any worksheets that we use in class, any feedback, because we again obviously get feedback at the end of the session, is purposely done at the bottom of our workshops page. So the students have to physically trawl through the rest of our workshops in terms of scrolling down to then see and use the worksheets that we have. So that's the idea there. Now, we work closely with LinkedIn Learning, lynda.com in the last few years. We've had access to that for 5 years for free for staff and students. And again, the idea there is to reinforce what we've done in class. So we create playlists, custom playlists, and we also as well look at enforcing and kind of supporting academic staff with using the software as well. And the idea there as well that we've got the skill companies that most require. The recent report on LinkedIn talked about the kind of soft and hard skill, and the idea is to align those soft and hard skills to what we're doing within digital skills. Okay, so quick little kind of figures on what we've done. So as I mentioned before, starting in 2015, I wasn't at UCLan until 2017. So the first few years, it's just simply kind of ticking along. So you can see that we are getting very low numbers. Again, this is obviously because of staff resources. As we all have, we have multiple aspects of our job and roles. So again, this is why the numbers are low. When we kind of took it on there, again, we, like any kind of learning technology, I'm dealing with staff, I'm dealing with students. I also do other kind of elements of my job. But when we put more focus onto the digital skills, you can obviously see an upturn in the numbers there, as you'd expect. As of 2019, we have currently got 314 bookings for our digital skills sessions. But again, anyone working in any kind of academia, the busy times is September to December. So we fully expect to be getting close, if not beating the numbers that we've got there. Popular courses. So again, I mentioned what we're kind of doing. We have some that are task-based. And again, we kind of had a look at some of the naming of things. So again, you can see that the words are popular because they're based on what students need to know. And my background in terms of doing media courses and graphic design courses meant that I was considered a high-level software user because I could use some of the Adobe stuff that we were talking about before. But when it comes to writing a dissertation, had no idea, and there was a lack of support 14 years ago when I completed my kind of education there. So again, we have task-based ones that you can see at the top that are popular. Along with even the idea of creating academic posters. I use things like Adobe InDesign, but to your average student, they're not getting marked on the aesthetics as such of their poster, so making it kind of simplified for every student. And then after that, you can see that there's been a kind of upturn in InDesign and Illustrator training as well. So when we are doing our feedback, we have a few kind of little graphs that we kind of use. And apologies to my right because I keep blocking people as well. So first thing we kind of look at is whether it'll help the studies. So again, these is marked out of 5. We use Microsoft Forms for this, so it's interactive and easy enough to use the data within Excel as well. And from here you can see that we've got 4.68 out of 5 will help with their studies. Now this kind of figure is slightly skewed by the fact that actually we get a lot of students that have got no filmmaking or design background, but they understand that within the world of YouTube and everything that invokes kind of employability now, they will have to look at further skills. So the fact that it's actually a high number, but we're actually getting students that would never even use some of the software that they're booking onto, okay? And after that, we've got feeling confident. We always have we have actively one-to-ones with people. We're accessible. We've got the ability to book on kind of one-to-ones with us as well, so students feel far more confident in the software they're using. And then with the idea of LinkedIn Learning, that kind of reinforces. And then after that as well, it helps if you're supportive and enthusiastic, which I always try to be. Right. So just final couple of things that I'm looking at in terms of digital skills. So the idea is when we're obviously always re-evaluating ourselves, always looking at what we can do better. With the recent Insight Survey 2018, kind of looking at the 4 themes that was discussed within the Jisc report, and just looking at the kind of what their findings were. So the first theme was the digital lives of learners, and you can see there that we do kind of courses on OneNote. We do things like Class Notebook as well. So again, the idea of 8 and 10 students access lecture notes and recorded lectures. We've got VLE, obviously at UCLan, and we obviously have the video. We have video libraries as well as obviously YouTube and stuff as well. So that kind of helps with that. And we actively allow students in digital skills we encourage it that they're bringing their own laptops that they're familiar with. And again, smartphones are often used when we are training people in some software like Microsoft Teams. You can see there, digital in the institution. 69% of students through digital skills would be important to their career. So the next kind of few figures that we're looking at is the fact that we've still got plenty of way to go in terms of making students and staff understand the importance of digital skills within employability. So again, theme 3 looks at similar kind of figures that again we need to just make sure that we are promoting this to a wider field. And again with theme 4, attitudes to digital, only a third students wanted digital skills to be used more. So again, this is where we can kind of help bridge that gap as well. Now, what we've found is when we do digital skills, we get a lot of mature students and we get a lot of international students. So we get, that is our main kind of age range that we are, or kind of customer base. So we get a lot of mature students, we get a lot of international students. What we've found is actually that in the last year or so, we go actively out to that kind of 18 to 25 market. That kind of student like me that thought that actually being able to use Premiere Pro was one thing, but actually trying to do a dissertation, they kind of thought they knew it. But what we find is a lot of students actually don't use the software effectively. And again, going out to that kind of customer base means that we are hitting more people from it. And again, just a couple of quotes there from lecturers that see the kind of relevance of having the digital skills workshops, the one-to-ones, but also going out actively and incorporating digital skills within their curriculum. Okay, right.
All right.
I think, Chris, I've spoken for a little bit now.
I'll just grab the one.
Yeah,
Cheers, mate. Thank you. So I think reflecting on the term authenticity really, which is something we picked up on in the title, another element of this that we really looked at is actually to take a bit of a step back and work much more closely with our academic staff in terms of developing their digital capability to better support our students. Now, looking back at the Jisc Digital Experience Insight Survey, which I know Phil has touched on from a staff perspective this time, it was particularly concerning to look at aspects around how staff felt they've been supported with regard to CPD, again, from a digital angle, particularly around not having enough time for innovation, opportunity to develop their digital skills, not knowing which skills would be relevant in their role as a teacher. And I think something that actually stood out for me, which was an interesting one, was this aspect of reward and recognition, which is something that we'd not really explored as such as an institution previously in regard to digital, and something that definitely kind of caught my eye as a future project. And that's really what led to our Digileam model and framework, which some of you may be aware of. And the kind of philosophy behind this is that it's absolutely a practice-informed approach. It's not about saying, here's a piece of technology, let's use it. It's actually about getting staff together, identifying existing approaches, recognising the value of what works particularly well, and then sharing that and supporting each other. And actually, with the amount of expertise we've got in the faculties in relation to TEL, we can get a long way by doing that. And that's really what that model illustrates. And I think the second element of this, which is equally important, is that we've designed the model and the framework so that as colleagues work through this, the idea is their sphere of influence will open up. So it's taking them as an individual and expanding that bubble out to faculty, institutional, and potentially sector level, which there are multiple examples of. The starting point for this, though, before we started building a framework, was to actually look at developing a community of practice. So this was done initially on a faculty level, in the faculty where I work, which is the Faculty of Health and Wellbeing, and it was providing an environment really for colleagues to connect outside of their disciplines and outside, again, of individual divisions, and breaking down those barriers And this was facilitated in Microsoft Teams, which some of you might have heard of earlier in Dale's session, which provided that perfect collaborative working environment. And we've really seen great success with this. There's been great feedback from staff, and they've had access to much more resource than we could offer them as a team because they're connecting with colleagues, again, across the faculty and sharing that expertise. So this was really positive to see. And really as an extension of that, this is where we put together our Digileam recognition program. So this is a three-tiered approach in this recognition program. We went for, I call them titles, they're probably more roles and responsibilities, that's the way we see it, but we've got practitioner, advocate and champion, and I know that particularly advocate and champion are terms that we've heard in sessions earlier today, which was interesting. Practitioner we've almost built as a bit of a baseline. We want every member of academic staff at the university to achieve this practitioner level, if you will, and it's really about exposing them to different elements. They can actually achieve this by attending a 2-hour workshop, engaging with the activities on there, and then the idea is at the end of the session, if they've met the learning outcomes, they would leave as a practitioner on that first level. Now, when colleagues step up to advocate or champion, what they're actually doing is they're taking a much more active role in the initiative, and again, in supporting other colleagues and sharing their practice, whether that be through blog posts, case studies, presentations, and the step up to champion is actually where colleagues are sharing their practice with the sector. So there's multiple examples where I've been out recently presenting with colleagues at BET and the DigiFest events run by Jisc, where we've actually been able to share real case studies and they can provide that real academic perspective. And they found that a really rewarding experience, and that's actually built and kind of gone towards their champion level status, if you will. And colleagues are rewarded in 3 ways. They receive a digital badge, which is like a micro-credential which they can put on their LinkedIn profile, email signature, etc. They get a formally presented certificate, which is presented at away days by the faculty executive team, and they get the colour-coded Digileam lanyard as modelled by Phil. Okay, so how have staff benefited from this? Well, I did an early evaluation because this was launched probably around September last year. And 90% of staff agreed that their skills and or knowledge had increased due to participation in the programme, which was really positive to see. 76% agreed that they had already been able to embed some of these skills and or knowledge in their practice, which was good at that early stage really. And going back to this element of support, it was really rewarding to see how staff felt their network of support in relation to TEL had expanded due to participation on the programme. And this one here saw 68% feeling more able to support others in relation to their practice. Really positive to see, and it's moving out of this model of there's a faculty, there's a service. We're actually working together and creating this network of practitioners or indeed advocates and champions. This is a really nice quote from one of our Digileam champions, Andy Sprake, who's a lecturer in sport and PE. And with him looking at his experiences on the programme, he reflects on it in 2 ways. One, in that it's celebratory in nature, so it's helped him to reflect on his practice and celebrate successes in his approaches in teaching, but also progressive in developing his digital capability and his ability to then support the digital development of his students as well, which again is a really nice message coming through there. So how has this impacted on the students? I mean, I'm going to pick out one particular example because following colleagues' participation in this programme, a number of colleagues, particularly advocate and champion level, started to adopt Microsoft Teams into their teaching as a teaching tool in terms of developing learner communities and indeed discussion type forums, if you will. And due to that, we ran an evaluation with students from 10 different courses to look at their experiences using Teams and how they felt it might have supported them. And again, the outcomes from this were really, really positive, particularly around students and their abilities to make connections with others on the course. Again, this was taken undergraduate and postgraduate level, so in different types of delivery. And also having an active voice in group discussion as well, which was really interesting, and particularly with the engagement outside of class, which is something that Dale touched on earlier in his session as well. So if we think more broadly about a work-ready graduate, I guess in any course delivery really, there are multiple elements which would prepare students, indeed graduates, for the workplace. So curriculum planning, assessment strategy, professional frameworks, etc. And we see digital as being a crucial part of this. And this is where we've started looking at our DigiReady project. So this is almost like the student version of what we would look at as the Digileam staff project. And an early concept of this was to look at how students could put together a portfolio which recorded evidence of their digital skill development in different areas. That might be their digital identity, communication, etc. The idea is this would then provide them with some sort of digital artifact which they could present to employers, whether that could be something they put on their LinkedIn profile or take to interview. And that was the early concept for that. And I think the other thing to point out as well is that a lot of our courses don't actually work with professional frameworks. So this is a model that we designed to kind of work in those instances. And the idea is that this DigiReady initiative would feed into curriculum planning and assessment strategy and vice versa, but it wouldn't necessarily come in direct contact with professional frameworks.
Okay then, so looking at kind of the next steps for what we're doing with digital skills, but also now, Chris just obviously spoke about their DigiReady. Kind of going forward for digital skills, we've already got accreditation with ACA in terms of Adobe sessions, exams for design and film production students. So looking further at kind of the MOS exams, and again, it was talked about previously as well, Autodesk as well with AutoCAD. So again, official kind of accreditation exams is what we'll be looking at with digital skills. We'll also as well be looking at, with a lot of our course contents, at the moment you book onto the sessions, but again, having video of those with captions and obviously the ability for students to be able to watch that whenever they need to. We already do a lot of stuff around kind of Teams, and we actively go out to the staff and teach their students how to use Teams on mobile devices, especially looking at the figures earlier on there. Obviously, a lot of students do use mobile devices, so again, we'll always use them where possible, but we'll be looking at kind of specific kind of smaller workshops to kind of support that. And then after that as well, the idea that we've got, we're working with our web team to kind of make sure things are more accessible for students, and to make sure that their website's obviously better used. Okay, thank you, Chris. So another thing we'll be looking at as well when we're kind of further investigating how employers merit digital readiness. So again, we've got links with Microsoft. We've got links with LinkedIn as well. So the idea there is to kind of see what they see as a student that is digitally ready, and kind of what they confirm with that, and utilise that with our DigiReady framework and also digital skills as well.
Okay. And that early DigiReady concept has been run as a proof of concept, if you will, with students from 3 different courses. Again, the feedback from that has been fantastic so far, and it's really important that we gather that student feedback and feed it in to developments going forward, so that the student voice is definitely a big part of that development. And the other part of this is that as a TELT team, myself, Phil, and the rest of the team, we will be working with our Digileam champions who have identified themselves as digital leads through the Digileam programme to lead on this development going forward. So we like to think that it's a really well-informed, authentic initiative moving forward. And this is something that we're going to be looking at doing over summer, so working with our academic teams to map this DigiReady framework, what that will finally look like, with curriculum ready for the new academic year. That's the next thing. And I'd like to close really with an invitation to join our Digilearn sector community. So this is an opportunity to connect with colleagues across the sector. We've facilitated this in Microsoft Teams. We've got around about 80 to 90 FE and HE institutions in here already. It's an opportunity to share case studies. We've got a series of webinars running from the likes of Microsoft. We've got other institutions in there. We're running some with our existing Digilearn champions as well. So it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of share resources and really learn from each other, which is what we're all here for, really. Thank you very much. Anyone, any questions? Are we doing questions? Yeah. You all right?
Hi. I was just wondering how many of the academic staff you've got to the digital champion status? So
Okay, yeah.
the top level.
So I've been we've run this as like an extended pilot, if you will, in the faculty where I'm based, which is health and wellbeing. We've got around about 450 staff in that faculty. We've been running the programme from around about September. We've currently got 140 out of those 450 who are somewhere on the framework. We've got 8 champions and around about 8 advocates. Most of the advocates are moving over to champion, and then it's a case of us working with the practitioners, of which there are many, to identify. And what we're trying to do is get to a point where we have a champion and maybe a couple of advocates per course team or division. But I think it's recognising how we can support staff in seeing the value of working through the programme, and I think the community definitely facilitates that in seeing how they can learn from other people and kind of exchange ideas. And that's something that's now being launched across the other faculties as well. Now we've got that kind of model in place, if you will.
Just wondering really what the uptake of the LinkedIn learning is. You know, have you got figures on how many students are kind of engaged with that? Is that popular?
We do, yeah, it's... at the moment it's actually, I think last time I looked it was about 1,500, so it's actually quite low figures, because the idea is, again, much like with digital skills, it's getting yourself out there, getting your name out there. We're actively always talking to staff about the fact that how it can benefit their learning, benefit their students' learning, should I say, and help them obviously reinforce what they're talking about. So it is something that, we are pushing, very much so. And because obviously as well it's free rather than it being £25 to £30 a month for the students. So yeah. So I'll stand really close to Chris.
You said that you are now trying to target the 18 to 25s. Any tips for that?
I mean, you might not know it from today. I'm quite bolshy, so like, I just, it's...
No.
Nah, not at all. Essentially, it's always trying to find common themes where actually is benefiting them. So it helps when we kind of might go in with initially the idea that we're talking about a dissertation, or again, we get a lot of students that struggle with Excel, any kind of software. So it's always the idea that it does actually help when the academic member of staff's enforcing it as well. So we often make sure, as you'd all expect, that the member of staff's there so they can give clarity to kind of what we're talking about and relate that back to their own practice. Yeah.
So are you going via the modules? You're not doing just a generic marketing thing. It's always via the academic staff.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's always via the academic staff. So again, we work within, we've got certain faculties that we look after. So Chris mentioned health, I look at the kind of more creative kind of faculty. So again, building that relationship, and then from that offering the plethora of things that we have as well. But yeah, absolutely, make sure that the members, the academic needs to really help support that, because again, if you walk into film students as I used to be, and you're talking about dissertations, they're not particularly interested initially.
So we have one more question over here. You sure? Well, it's time for refreshments, so there's teas and coffees outside, and then we restart again at 3:30. But can I just ask you to say a big thank you to Chris and Phil?
Thank you.